That front fascia, just look at it for a second. Those angular, swept headlights, that vertical grille, the gold-bronze lower splitter catching the light like something forged rather than manufactured. This thing doesn't look like a motorhome. It looks like a threat. And I mean that as the highest compliment possible. Now, before we go any further, full transparency up front. What you're looking at is a fictional AI-generated concept design. No factory built this, no showroom has it, no delivery date exists. It was born entirely in imagination. And honestly, that almost makes it more interesting, because whoever dreamed this up had absolutely zero limitations. No accountants, no safety regulations killing the proportions, no marketing team watering down the vision. Pure design intent. What we're doing today is a full breakdown, exterior walk-around, interior logic, powertrain thinking, and my honest verdict on what this concept gets genuinely right and where it maybe goes too far. But stay with me, because there is one specific design decision on the lower body of this vehicle that I have genuinely never seen executed this way on anything in this class, and I'm saving it for when we get there. Let's go. Let's start right at the front, because this is where the designer made their first big statement, and it's a bold one. The headlight assembly is sharp, aggressively sharp. We're talking angular, forward-swept lenses that cut across the front face like the brow of something predatory. They're not round, they're not soft, they're not trying to look friendly. These lights are making a declaration. And flanking a vertical slatted grille, the kind of grille you'd associate with ultra-premium European saloons, the overall impression at the front is something caught between a private jet and a supercar, on a motorhome. That contradiction alone is worth paying attention to. Now, why does that matter to you practically? Because the front face of a vehicle this size is what you see pulling into a campsite, a resort, a city street. Most motorhomes announce themselves with all the visual drama of a shipping container. This thing announces itself like an event. That's not trivial. That's the difference between arriving and arriving. The grille itself, vertical bars deeply set with what appears to be a central emblem, communicates old-world craftsmanship in a very deliberate way. It's the designer saying, this is not a utility vehicle that happens to be large. This is a luxury object that happens to move. There's a difference, and you feel it immediately. Now, let's move to the side profile, and this is where it gets really interesting. The roofline on this concept is remarkably controlled. For a vehicle of this interior volume, that roof sits surprisingly low and flat, tapering with real discipline rather than just bulging upward the way most coaches do when they're trying to maximize ceiling height. The designer has made an aerodynamic choice here that sacrifices nothing visually. That flat, disciplined roofline gives the whole silhouette a sense of speed, of intention, even sitting completely still in what appears to be a studio environment. And then, the glass. The glass runs in one long, dramatically tinted band across the entire passenger side. Not individual windows, one continuous dark sweep of glazing that stretches from just behind the A-pillar all the way toward the rear. Do you understand what that does for natural light inside, for your sense of space, for waking up somewhere beautiful and having the entire landscape presented to you rather than framed in a porthole? That's not just a design choice, that's a philosophy, an entire approach to how human beings relate to the environment around them while living in a moving space. And it works. The body surface itself, finished in what appears to be a deep graphite with strong bronze and gunmetal undertones, does something sophisticated in this lighting environment. Watch how the light travels across those panels. There are no flat sections. Every surface has a subtle curve, a slight crown, a carefully considered angle. This means in real-world outdoor lighting, golden hour, overcast skies, city ambient light, this vehicle would look different every single time you see it. That's the mark of a truly considered surface. Paint isn't just color here, it's texture, it's movement.
Now, the lower body. And this is the detail I promised you at the top. Look at the front splitter. That is not painted. That is not carbon fiber matte. That appears to be a textured, almost granular gold-bronze surface treatment, almost like hammered metal or raw mineral. In a concept focused on ultra-smooth, ultra-sculptural bodywork, above, suddenly, at the very lowest point of the front fascia, there is this raw, tactile, almost geological material contrast. It's the designer breaking their own rules on purpose, saying, we know how to be smooth, we're choosing to be rough right here. That kind of controlled contradiction is what separates serious design from decoration. I haven't seen it executed this way on anything in this segment. The wheels deserve their own moment. Large, multi-spoke alloys, dark finish, likely a near black or dark gunmetal, sitting in proportion with the lowered stance of the whole vehicle. Motorhomes typically run utilitarian wheels because they're optimized for load bearing, not aesthetics. These wheels are optimized for aesthetics first, which tells you everything about the intent of this concept. This was never designed to carry a weekend's worth of camping gear. This was designed to carry a lifestyle. The exterior alone makes this one of the most compelling concepts I've analyzed on this channel. But honestly, the exterior is the easier part. What I think is going on inside this thing, based purely on reading these proportions, is where this gets genuinely fascinating.
Now, no interior renders exist for this concept. At least none that I have access to. But here's the thing, I don't need them. Because exterior design is a language, and if you know how to read it, the outside tells you almost everything about the philosophy that would govern the inside. So let me walk you through what I think, based on careful observation, is almost certainly happening in there. First, layout logic. That roofline, as disciplined as it looks from outside, still suggests a healthy interior ceiling height toward the center of the cabin. Based on the exterior proportions, I'd estimate the habitable section sits somewhere between 1.9 and 2.1 meters of interior height at its peak. In real terms, that's close enough to full stand-up height for most people, and in a vehicle this size, that is the single most important spatial quality you can have. That is the difference between a motorhome that feels like a luxury suite and one that feels like a very expensive tent. Full stand-up height changes everything about how you inhabit a space. The glass band we discussed on the exterior, running the full length of the passenger side, would flood the main living area with natural light across essentially the entire length of the space. Imagine a living area where one full wall is effectively a window, where sitting on a sofa, eating a meal, working at a desk, all of it happens against a backdrop of wherever you happen to be parked, a mountain, a coastline, a city skyline at dusk. The interior and the exterior world aren't separated in a space designed like this. They're in constant conversation. The living area itself, based on the proportional length of this vehicle, which I'd estimate sits somewhere in the 11 to 13 meter range, would likely occupy the rear 2/3 of the habitable space. Given the visual weight of the design, given the ultra-premium surface language on the outside, the interior materials in a concept like this would almost certainly follow a palette of dark wood veneers, brushed metals in that same bronze gunmetal family we see on the exterior, and upholstery that trends toward deep leather or performance fabric in near black or dark navy. Everything unified. Everything considered, no compromise material slipping in because it was cheaper. In the world of this concept, every surface matters. Now, sleeping. In a vehicle this length, a dedicated sleeping quarters toward the rear is the logical choice, separated from the main living space either by a sliding panel or a full dividing wall. Based on the roofline behavior toward the rear, it doesn't drop dramatically. There's enough structural height to accommodate a full fixed king or queen bed without the ceiling pressing down on you. That matters enormously. There is nothing that kills the feeling of luxury faster than having to contort yourself into a sleeping space. If the bed is fixed, full size, and surrounded by enough vertical space to sit up naturally, you stop thinking of it as a motorhome bed. You start thinking of it as just a bed.
That psychological shift is everything. The kitchen, in a concept following this philosophy, would be compact but intentional. We're not talking about a galley with laminate countertops and a microwave screwed into the wall. We're talking about an integrated cooking station, induction surfaces flush with the counter, refrigeration hidden behind panel-matched cabinetry, storage maximized through intelligent engineering rather than just adding more cupboards. A kitchen designed so that the act of preparing a meal in it doesn't feel like a compromise, that it feels like a choice. The bathroom, and this is always the engineering puzzle in a vehicle like this, would almost certainly be a full wet bath rather than a split configuration. In a concept that clearly prioritizes the experience of being in the space over the raw square footage of the space, a wet bath with proper shower dimensions, a vanity with real mirror height, and fixtures that don't feel borrowed from a budget hotel, that's the only option that makes sense philosophically. Everything else about this design screams, we are not cutting corners. The bathroom wouldn't either. And then the cockpit. That massive windscreen. That is not a standard motorhome windscreen. The glass wraps and angles in a way that suggests exceptional forward and peripheral visibility from the driver's seat. In a vehicle this long, visibility is a genuine safety and comfort consideration, and this concept seems to treat the cockpit not as a functional necessity bolted onto the front of a rolling apartment, but as an integrated part of the experience. I would fully expect the driver's interface in a concept this forward-thinking to incorporate some form of digital display architecture, heads-up display, integrated navigation, possibly even camera-assisted side and rear visibility given the tinted glass and the vehicle's overall dimensions. The cockpit would feel, if my reading of this design is right, less like sitting in a bus and more like sitting in a very large, very fast luxury SUV. That matters, because the person who would inhabit a vehicle like this doesn't just want to arrive somewhere beautifully. They want the act of getting there to feel just as considered.
Now let's talk about what would actually power something like this, because this is where fictional concepts either earn real credibility or fall apart completely. A vehicle with this visual identity, this surface language, this clear rejection of anything conventional, it cannot, philosophically, be running a diesel combustion engine. That would be like finishing a bespoke tailored suit with off-the-shelf plastic buttons. The design language demands electrification. So in a real-world build scenario, if this ever left the render stage, we'd be looking at a large-format battery electric platform, something in the 350 to 500 kilowatt-hour range, to give this vehicle genuinely useful range without constant charging anxiety. For a vehicle of this size and presumed weight, that's not excessive. That's realistic if you want 400 to 500 kilometers of real-world highway range. The technology to do this at production scale doesn't quite exist in a package optimized for motorhome architecture yet, but the direction the industry is moving suggests it's a matter of years, not decades. The roof situation is also worth noting. That flat, disciplined roofline we admired from the exterior. In a real engineering build of this concept, that surface would be the obvious home for an integrated solar array. Not panels bolted on top, integrated photovoltaic cells built flush into the roof material itself. At current efficiency levels, a roof surface this size could generate somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 kilowatts of continuous solar input under good conditions. That won't drive the vehicle, but it will run climate systems, lighting, and keep a secondary battery bank topped up for stationary off-grid living. And in a concept imagining a future where you might park somewhere extraordinary for days at a time, that kind of energy independence is not a luxury feature. It's the whole point. Onboard smart systems in a concept following this design philosophy would almost certainly include climate automation, zoned, learned, predictive rather than manual.
connectivity designed for remote work capability, satellite-based internet, sound isolation engineering that takes the road noise a vehicle this size typically generates and, through a combination of mass, insulation, and possibly active noise cancellation, reduces the interior acoustic environment to something approaching a private jet cabin. If this were ever built, it would need advances in lightweight structural materials, probably a combination of carbon composite and high-strength aluminum to keep the weight manageable enough for the electric platform to deliver that range. The technology exists. The engineering challenge is integrating it at this scale, at this quality level, at a cost that, even in a fictional scenario, doesn't make the concept completely absurd. All right. Here's where I actually tell you what I think. What this concept gets genuinely right is the design coherence. From that dramatic front face all the way through the side profile, the glass treatment, the surface language, the material contrast at the lower body, this is a concept designed with a point of view, a singular vision that didn't compromise itself into mediocrity. That is harder to achieve than it looks. Most concepts, especially AI-generated ones, start interesting and then gradually become inconsistent as the design language gets pulled in too many directions. This one holds its line. That's worth respecting. The most impressive single detail? That textured bronze-gold lower splitter treatment at the front. I keep coming back to it because in a design that could have been seductively smooth from end to end, that raw material contrast at the lowest point of the front face shows genuine design maturity. That detail alone elevates this from impressive to genuinely sophisticated. What would I change? The stance. Specifically, the vehicle sits almost too low for something that needs to traverse real-world road conditions. That lowered, almost supercar-adjacent ride height is visually intoxicating, but practically the first speed bump would become a philosophical crisis. A concept like this could afford adaptive suspension technology that raises the body for transit and lowers it for arrival, and that would solve both the aesthetic and the practicality simultaneously. That's the one thing I'd push the designer on. What does this concept say about where luxury mobility is heading? It says this: the people who will define the next generation of premium travel are not satisfied choosing between comfort and movement. They want both, simultaneously, all the time. They want to live in a space that is as considered as their home, but that wakes up somewhere different every morning. And they want the vehicle itself to be a design object worthy of attention in its own right, not just a functional box that happens to move. This concept, fictional as it is, understands that completely. It will never exist exactly as you've seen it today, and honestly, that's not the point. The point is what it makes you think about, what it makes you want, what it tells you about where human design imagination is right now and where it's going. It's a concept, it's fictional, it's AI-generated, and still one of the most visually authoritative motorhome designs I've broken down on this channel. Now, my question for you in the comments: that textured bronze-gold lower splitter treatment on the front fascia, design genius or too much? Drop your honest take below. I read every single one. And if this kind of deep dive concept analysis is what you come to YouTube for, there's a lot more of it right here on this channel. Hitting subscribe is just the easiest way to make sure you don't miss the next one. I'll see you in the next breakdown.